Hello, my viewers. Watch this video and I'll be right back.
That again, the whole history of America is the history of rich white men telling not rich white people that their enemies are black and brown. It starts in the colonies of what would become the United States. Let's remember, during the colonial period, mid-1600s, there was no such thing as white people. I know some people who are now called white find that shocking, right? Because they think whiteness is real, right? But whiteness was created. Europeans didn't call themselves white. We didn't call ourselves white. We weren't all members of one big happy family. Are you kidding? Have you studied the history of Europe? The history of Europe was about killing each other. That's what we did in Europe. We just killed each other before we figured out there were other people to kill. We just killed each other, right? I mean, that was the history of Europe. The English hated the Irish, right? Northern Italians didn't even think that Southern Italians were Italians. The Germans hated everybody, and everybody hated their ass right back, right? There was no team called white, no race called white, but all of a sudden, in the middle of the 1600s, there was. Why? Why was it suddenly necessary to create this thing called the white race? Well, because rich people can count, that's why. And so rich folks looked around, the ones that owned all the land, you know, in the colonies, the colonial elite, looked around and they realized something, that they were heavily outnumbered by African enslaved folks, by European indentured servants who were just one level above a slave, or other Europeans who weren't technically indentured servants, but they were still peasants, didn't have any money, didn't have any land, and they could do the math. They added it up and they were like, damn, we got to figure out a way to split these folks apart from one another or they're going to rise up and take our stuff, right? Because after a while, these black folks who were enslaved Africans and these quote-unquote white folks who were poor Europeans are going to figure out they're all getting played by these rich people, right? So ultimately, the rich figure out they got to come up with some way to get somebody in that group on their team. The easiest thing is to get the poor Europeans, right? Because at least they look like you. They sort of share some of the customs and the culture. So they all of a sudden create this thing called whiteness, and they say, now you're part of the club. Now we're going to let you testify in court, enter into contracts, vote, at least if you're a man, own a little bit of land, at least if you're a man, right? And we're going to get rid of indentured servitude. No more of that, because you're too good for that. And we're going to take the white men, now called white men, and put them on the slave patrol to keep black people in line. Give them a horse and a gun and a badge and make them feel big and powerful, right? They're still poor. They still don't have anything. They didn't pay the slave patrol well. Right? Just exploited them, used them as a buffer between the elite and the other poor folks, particularly poor folks of color. And pretty soon the rebellions that occasionally happened where black and white got together to overthrow the elite, those stopped because the divide and conquer had begun to work. Right? You could turn people against each other by telling those poor white folks they got to keep these black people in line. And so that divide and conquer gets initiated in the colonies. Rich white men telling not rich white people that their enemies are black and brown.
Now, what this man said resonates deeply with the historical and ongoing realities of systemic oppression and division perpetuated by those in power. The narrative of rich palm color elites exploring racial divisions to maintain their own dominance is a sobering reflection of the foundations upon which much of modern society is built. The notion that palm-coloredness was constructed to consolidate power among European elites, pitting poor palm-color people against people of color and black people, is a stark reminder of the deliberate efforts to sow discord and prevent solidarity among oppressed groups. Now, this strategy continues to manifest in various forms today, from racially divisive rhetoric to institutionalized R.Aces that disproportionately impacts communities of color and black people. Moreover, recognizing the role of colonialism and slavery in shaping the modern world underscores the interconnectedness of global systems of oppression. The exploitation of African enslaved people and European indentured servants was not isolated to the Americas, but intertwined with the economic and political interests of European powers worldwide. What he said serves as a poignant reminder of the importance of solidarity among marginalized communities in dismantling systems of oppression. By acknowledging our shared history and collective struggle, we can work towards a more just and equitable future for all. The commentary highlights the historical context of how racial divisions were deliberately fostered by the colonial elite to maintain control and prevent upsprings among oppressed groups. Now, it underscores the economic motivations behind the creation of racial categories, particularly the construction of palm-coloredness as a means of consolidating power and privilege among European elites. During the colonial period, the exploitation of African enslaved peoples and European indentured servants was central to the economic prosperity of European colonies in the Americas. However, the colonial elite recognized the potential threat posed by a unified uprising of these oppressed groups against their oppressors. In response, they implemented tactics to divide and conquer, exploiting racial differences to sow discord and prevent solidarity among the oppressed. Now, this strategy of racial division has had far-reaching consequences, shaping not only the history of the Americas, but also the global landscape. The legacy of colonialism and slavery continues to impact socio-economic and political structures worldwide, perpetuating systemic inequalities and injustices. Now, this video prompts reflection on the enduring legacy of racism and discrimination, highlighting the ongoing struggles faced by communities of color and Black people in their quest for justice and equality. Now, it underscores the importance of acknowledging and confronting the deep-rooted structures of oppression that continue to shape our world today. We have finally come to the end of the video. What do you have to say? Share your thoughts as well in the comment section. Thank you for watching and see you in my next video.